Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Dougherty. I, of course, am your host, Rick Dougherty. In just a few, I'm going to be talking to Sarah, one of my good friends in the Disney fan community. She's going to be discussing when she's going to feel comfortable taking her family on a trip either across the country to Walt Disney World or down to Disneyland with everything that's happening with the pandemic. Since she also has a good bit of experience with both Disneyland and Walt Disney World, we're going to do some comparisons as well because that's always fun. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a second to remind everyone I am an authorized Disney travel planner. If you're looking for a free, no-obligation quote on a Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Universal Orlando Resort, or any other type of vacation, shoot me an email, rick@eartotheretravel.com. rick@eartotheretravel.com. You can give me a phone call, 727-507-3123, 727-507-3123. You can follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/eartothererick, Twitter at twitter.com/Rick_ear, and Instagram.com/RickEar2there. My services are always 100% free to you. It really does help the show if you book through me, and with everything going on with park pass reservations and new rides opening, new restaurants opening, restaurants that may be reopening again after the park closures, everything that is going on that is so confusing, I got you covered. I know what's happening. Rick@eartotheretravel.com. And now it is time to welcome one of my good friends from Diz Twitter. You can follow her at SarahSays84. It's Sarah with an H. And here she is right now. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Nobody ever asked me that. That's very nice of you.
Oh.
So, we are going to discuss today the fact that you are far away from, but really both U.S. Disney resorts, and you're sort of dealing with that situation, obviously not yet with Disneyland because they're not even open yet, but with Walt Disney World or any of these other vacations, when you're going to feel comfortable for your family actually finally making that decision to go, when you're going to make that decision, whether it's safe for you or there's other things that might be taken into consideration. So right now, when was the last time you were at Disneyland, and when was the last time you were at Walt Disney World?
We were in Disneyland. My husband and I believe it was the February before COVID hit big time. It was a year before that. So it was right before Star Wars opened and right before COVID just kind of started creeping in, because where we are is where COVID started in the US. So we shut down a lot sooner. So that was the last time we were there. Walt Disney World, we were there 6 years ago in September.
So you have not yet experienced Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
I have not. We were planning it, and then the pandemic, and it shut down.
And then the pandemic, we have to say that after so many different sentences, which is unfortunate. But because we interact so much on Twitter and we see so many of those types of things, you don't even think about, like a lot of people like me, we get spoiled because we're right here, and we don't even think about the people who didn't even get to experience Star Wars Galaxy's Edge because of this and all of those different things. So you're saying when you were there at Disneyland, it wasn't a few weeks before the closure, it was a year before the closure.
It was a little bit less than, yeah, it was about a year before Disneyland started shutting down. We were there because we got there when we were visiting. It was not too long before it was supposed to open to the public, because it was when, all the cast members were standing outside like, keep going, you can't come in, like, don't keep going.
Obviously, you're not going to be going to Disneyland until that actually reopens. But
Right.
what is your thought process as a family when you're going to feel safe actually making that decision?
My husband and I have talked a ton about it. And I mean, when we go, especially when we go to Walt Disney World, we bring everybody. I mean, my sister, my parents, my mom's best friend, like we all go. If we're going to go that far to the other side of the country, we're going to go. And as of right now, like our biggest thing is everybody feels most comfortable when we can all be vaccinated. And we've been feeling that the safety precautions that Disney has been putting in place have been amazing and wonderful, but with so many different ages coming and health, and I mean my son is 5 years old and he's not going to want to wear a mask all day long, and so it's trying to find what is most comfortable for everybody who's visiting.
And we didn't mention this earlier, but you're in the Seattle area. So you guys
Correct.
got hit really, really hard at the very beginning of this. So you have been probably on more of a lockdown than most of the people throughout the country. What is it even looking like there now for people who don't know? Because you did get hit really, really hard at the beginning.
We did. At the very beginning, I was out of work. They shut down where I work for almost 10 weeks. We were shut down, and that was before the whole country started shutting down. So, what it looks like now is things are starting to slowly open back up. We are in kind of a phase two where you can have like 25% of the amount of people in restaurants. And I work in the food industry, and luckily, I work for a big coffee chain and we're in a drive-through only, so I don't have to worry about any of that. But yeah, it's been, oh my gosh, I think 2 weeks since they did, and like museums are just kind of starting to open. I took my son to a children's museum and it was like hardly anybody there. So we're definitely still very strict on what we're allowed to. You still have to wear a mask outside. It's pretty watched over in the area that I'm in.
So I know two people personally who live in the Seattle area. My cousin works for a big computer company out there. And I know you, and you work for a big coffee company. So now I guess I just need to know somebody who works in a grunge band, and then I've got all of Seattle covered.
Exactly.
So all of that sounds interesting. You have said that you travel most often to Disneyland, and then you do the big trips to Walt Disney World as a family with a big group.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about Disneyland for a little while because so many people are missing it right now. I know I'm certainly one of them. Last time I was out there was March of 2019. So, a lot of us are missing it. Let's just talk about some of your favorite experiences in Disneyland. Like, what, for example, is your favorite ride at Disneyland?
That's really tough. I was trying to think about this earlier and what my favorite ride is, because so I have a favorite ride in each park, but I would say, I mean, the cliche like Haunted Mansion, because I'm a huge Haunted Mansion stan. But Indiana Jones Adventure is, you can't go to Disneyland, in my opinion, and not do Indiana Jones Adventure because you don't get that experience at Disney World. And then it's a tie. Like I have a hard time with California Adventures. Last time we were there, we rode Mission Breakout like forever. That was great. Like I love it. I love Tower of Terror. Don't get me wrong, I love it. But Mission Breakout was so fun, and I would ride that. I mean, even my husband, who does not like rides like that, was like, I'd ride that again.
I think one of the reasons I'm okay with Mission Breakout at California Adventure is because we do still have Tower of Terror at Walt Disney World. And I do like the thought of having different versions because I'm definitely the type of person who wants to have reasons to go across the country and go to Disneyland, or have people like you have reasons to come across the country and go to Walt Disney World. And I'm assuming that Dinosaur just doesn't cut it compared to Indy for you, even though it's the same
No,
ride system.
absolutely not. When I last rode it was forever ago. And in the picture, I'm like literally ducking because I'm like, I am not about this ride. When the dino comes at you, I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm done.
So another thing when talking about Disneyland versus Disney World that I like to ask, because I think there's a very specific answer to this. Are there any rides that you think are better at Walt Disney World than Disneyland and vice versa?
Yes, there is definitely. For me, the Haunted Mansion is so much better at Walt Disney World than it is at Disneyland, in my opinion.
Really?
Number one, I love that they don't switch it over for the holiday. And I mean, probably because I grew up going to Disneyland. So anytime between Halloween and New Year's, it's Christmas the whole time. And I mean, it's okay, but I love the extra, like the room with all the stairs. And I feel like the attic scene is so much better in the Haunted Mansion. Yeah, that one definitely, I think they did way better at Disney World.
So anybody who hasn't been to Disneyland and has only experienced this at Disney World, they do a Nightmare Before Christmas overlay starting in like September at Disneyland. They don't do that at Walt Disney World because there are more vacationers and less annual pass holders. Well, at least there were fewer annual pass holders. So that's what she's referring to there. Now, I believe personally that I think that Haunted Mansion is better at Disneyland because at Walt Disney World, we don't have Hatbox Ghost.
That is true. I didn't think about that. That is very true. And I was super surprised by Hatbox Ghost last time we were there because I knew it was there but hadn't even thought about it. And when we went through, I'm like, oh, wait, this is different. It's great. But no, that is true. That's true.
Yeah, that is definitely the one thing. But my wife also agrees with you that it is better at Walt Disney World. That's one of our very few fights. But I believe that Splash Mountain is the only ride that's better at Walt Disney World because you have your side by side instead of back to back. It's a bigger experience. It's not a ride that I ride very often because I don't like to get wet
Me either.
at the beginning of a park day, but I do believe that the Walt Disney World version is better. But when it comes to everything else, like Thunder is better at Disneyland, in my humble opinion. Space Mountain at Disneyland is a million times better. Your
I
back
agree.
will thank you.
Yes.
And then there's some rides that are basically the exact same. Winnie the Pooh and Peter Pan and stuff like that. But when you decide to make the big trip with the whole family at Walt Disney World, where are some of your favorite places to stay?
We actually have only ever stayed at the Caribbean Beach Resort because we loved it so much that every time we go, we look at other resorts. We're like, oh, we could go here, we could here. But then ultimately, we just love the location and how easy it is to get to everywhere from there. It's so central that we always go back to that same hotel.
And I'll tell you what, now it's even better because if you haven't been there in 6 years, that was before the Skyliner that makes Hollywood Studios 3 minutes, 4 minutes maybe to get there, depending on how close you are to the Skyliner station with your room.
Right.
And it makes Epcot pretty easy to get to. I mean, it's definitely quicker than taking the bus. And then you get to go in that back International Gateway entrance, which is always good as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited for the Skyliner. That's like one thing that I was waiting for our next trip. I was like, we finally get the Skyliner.
If you're waiting for there to be a vaccine of some sort, you're probably going to end up going to Disneyland first before you go to Walt Disney World because I would imagine by the time you feel safe, both of them will be open. It is what it's sounding like from my perspective.
Yeah, and ultimately, yeah, because this year we were planning on taking our son for his first trip, and we really wanted his first trip to be Walt Disney World because of how big it is and how long we can stay and how fun it is. But at the same time, yeah, with the vaccine and everything, it's like, okay, ultimately it might work out better to go to Disneyland first, depending, of course, on how easy or hard it will be to get tickets once it reopens.
Yeah, that is definitely going to be a question about how they're going to do that. The reservation system has been working out pretty well at Walt Disney World, but it just seems like it would be a lot harder to work something like that at Disneyland when you only have the two parks and you have the one park where people definitely want to go more. However, I think the Avengers Campus might change that a little bit where it might add a lot of DCA interest for people who are traveling. So hopefully they can get something going there. When they reopen, if they have some of that stuff ready, it might be easier to spread out people. But at Walt Disney World, you know, maybe you want to go to Magic Kingdom one day and you can't get the reservation. And then, you know, Hollywood Studios definitely is hard to get a reservation sometimes. But you don't get those two. There's almost always Epcot available. And Animal Kingdom is almost always available. So it's definitely set up better for that. So I don't know how they're going to do tickets. I think that's probably one of their biggest worries as they go into it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, when we were there last time, they had just started the like reservation fast pass system on your phone where you would get to the gate, but you had to be at the gate or right inside the gate. And then everyone was like, Radiator Springs Racers, we got to go now. And so, yeah, I'm interested to see what they come up with.
Yeah, so you're talking about Max Pass. So you sprung for Max Pass on your ticket, which I think, obviously, we don't know what Disneyland is going to look like when it reopens. But there is nothing at a Disney park that is more worth your money than Max Pass at Disneyland. They run by the old paper fast pass system that Walt Disney World used to have years and years ago, where you have to run to the ride and get the ticket with a comeback time. If you have Max Pass, you don't have to run to the ride. So maybe you can rope drop Space Mountain, bolting towards Tomorrowland. And while you're doing that, you can be on your phone making a Max Pass reservation for Radiator Springs Racer if you have a park hopper, or Big Thunder Mountain, or whatever. Probably Indiana Jones if you're staying in Disneyland. So you can go on one ride while making that fast pass for the next ride. And it really is a huge, huge benefit. You can even do it for some of the shows at night, which is really good. And it is your photo pass for the day.
That's right. Yeah, when we found that out, it was amazing because we love PhotoPass.
Right, at Walt Disney World, to get it for your vacation, if you order it in advance, it's $169.99. So paying per day the price of Max Pass, now everybody in your party has to have Max Pass, so it will add up, but it's two different things, and just throwing in that free photo pass is really, really beneficial. Now, because I live in Florida and I am in Walt Disney World or Universal Orlando Resort basically every week, I'm at one of them. So I end up skewing a little more in that direction. So let's talk about some other things at Disneyland that our listeners might really appreciate. What are some of your favorite quick service locations at Disneyland? And what are some that people should avoid?
That's a good question. I don't know. I have to think about that for a minute. It's been a long time since I did quick service at Disneyland. I would say a lot of people avoid it, but I really like Pinocchio's Village House or Haws or however you say it. Because to me it's nostalgic. I remember going there as a kid and I love it. um, Definitely quick service over in, I cannot remember off the top of my head, but over in New Orleans, basically any food quick service in New Orleans Square is going to be awesome. To stay away from, I don't know. There aren't really any that I've ever not gone to. I'm a pretty equal opportunist. There's a really good taco place. I don't know if it's still there now that they're closed, but there was a really good taco place in California Adventure for a while too, over in the pier.
So what about table service restaurants? What about your fancier dinners when you're on vacation and you want to have that really nice meal? What's your favorite place to go when you're there?
We always try and hit the Blue Bayou because the ambiance it makes the whole thing. Like I really like the food because I like seafood and that's the majority of what it is. But the ambiance, because you are inside the Pirates ride at the loading dock, it is so fun to watch everybody and people watch but it's not loud. So you'd think when you're sitting there, you just hear the boats like loading and unloading and them talking, but you can't really hear any of that. You just see them kind of float by you. And I love it.
I think it's funny when here at Epcot at Walt Disney World and people talk about San Angel in the Mexico Pavilion and they're like, oh, it looks like it's just like Blue Bayou where the boats are coming past. And I'm like, not really, because the food at Blue Bayou is so much better than the food at San Angel. And there's something so iconic about Pirates of the Caribbean going past you as opposed to, and I love Grand Fiesta Tour, don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't have that same iconic feel as watching the boats start their trip in Pirates of the Caribbean. And when we were talking about rides that are better at Disneyland than Walt Disney World. That is the prime example right there. Pirates is the one that after you've ridden it at Disneyland, you will ride it less at Walt Disney World because it is so good at Disneyland.
Yeah, I agree. I love that beginning part when you first launch off and you're going through the bayou and stuff. It's like, I feel like I always miss that when I'm in Walt Disney World. Like, I still like it, but the inside queue and how they do it, to me, it just isn't the same feeling.
And it looks like Phantasmic is going to be coming back pretty soon to Walt Disney World. They're trying to figure out a way to get that going. Have you seen Phantasmic at both Walt Disney World and Disneyland?
I have, yes. Yep, we had a special package for the one at Walt Disney World, so we were like, let's go experience it.
So which one do you like better?
I'm not gonna lie, I love the Disneyland one. It feels totally different when you're watching it on Tom Sawyer Island than watching it in the amphitheater. Like, the amphitheater is great, but to me, it's a totally different show than watching it sitting on the shore of like the island.
I think one thing we have to state here is Disneyland has very, very limited space. So they have to make the most of every inch, every foot. They have to cram a lot of entertainment into a smaller place. So everything has to be quality or Autopia. It has to either be good or Autopia. And at Walt Disney World, I personally would rather spend a week at Walt Disney World Resort than Disneyland Resort if I was like in Kansas. And either one of them was equidistant. There's so much more to do at Walt Disney World. It's just every individual thing, I feel, is a little better at Disneyland.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's true. I would never spend a week in Disneyland. You just run out of things to do, in my opinion. But Disney World, I feel like, because there's so much and there's so many cool things that, because of the space that they have, that you don't ever get experience it all in one go. So every time you go, there's something new that you may not have seen the time before, and all these little nuanced things and all the festivals. We don't have that on this coast. And the festivals are amazing. That's like my favorite time of year to go.
And it's almost like with the Epcot Festivals, it's not even your favorite time to go anymore because it's basically, they're basically running all year long. Epcot started the International Food and Wine Festival the day the parks reopened, or at least the day Epcot reopened this year in mid-July. And that lasted until like a week before they started Festival of the Holidays. And then it took about a week in between Festival of the Holidays to get it ready for Festival of the Arts. And then there's like a week in there before it's Flower and Garden. And Flower and Garden is scheduled to end at the beginning of July. So if they start Food and Wine the same time they did last year, it's basically going to be festivals all year long with 1 week in between.
Wow, I didn't realize they were so close together now, because I've only ever been for the Food and Wine Festival, and which we were all super excited about. So every year that we've gone, it's like, oh, this is awesome. But yeah, our goal is the Arts Festival. That is like our next big one we want to go during.
Yeah, Festival of the Arts just wrapped up, and it is by far my favorite. I absolutely love it. You can meet the artists at some of the booths. Sometimes they're there to sign artwork that they've done. The only negative, and I won't really call this a negative, of Festival of the Arts is they spend so much time preparing the food, so not only does it taste good, but it looks good. It's very Instagrammable. That's awesome, but because of that, the small dishes are a little more expensive at Festival of the Arts than they are at the other festivals, so you end up spending more money at it. But besides that, it is really, really my favorite festival of all of them. So, Sarah, it was great having this conversation with you. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was super fun.
If you want to check out Sarah's Twitter, she is one of the very positive people on Twitter. So I definitely recommend following her at Sarah Says 84. She talks about Disneyland. She talks about Walt Disney World. And she's really, really looking forward to getting back to the parks. So she would probably love to see your pictures and live vicariously through you.
Definitely. Most definitely.
We will definitely have Sarah back on the show very soon. Thought today's episode was a really good chance to introduce you to her, get some of her thoughts on Disneyland, Walt Disney World, and when she's going to feel comfortable having her family travel again. This has been episode 4 of Tall Guy Talks Travel. If you're getting ready to travel again, shoot me an email, rick@eartotheretravel.com, rick@eartotheretravel.com. You can give me a call, 727-507-3123, 727-507-3123. Not only am I an authorized Disney travel planner, but I am either at Walt Disney World or Universal Orlando Resort each and every week, and some weeks I'm at both of them. And my services are always 100% free to you. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Tall Guy Talks Travel. We'll talk to you again next Thursday. Have a great weekend, everyone.